If you've watched my videos in the past, you might remember this one about the legendary Cowboys head coach Tom Landry. Landry was the first coach that the Cowboys ever had, and for nearly 3 decades, he was in charge, serving for a near unprecedented number of years with the organization, and helping the team make it to the Super Bowl 5 times and win it twice. However, everyone's got their moment when they just can't do it anymore, and Father Time comes for us all. And man, did it come for Landry throughout the late 1980s, when he very quickly became one of the worst coaches in all of football and got to a point where he had no idea what he was doing. During a 1988 game against the Philadelphia Eagles, Landry called a passing play with the Cowboys in field goal range, knowing that a field goal would put the Cowboys up by 2 scores and clinch the game with little time left on the clock. The reason why he called the pass? He didn't think the Cowboys were in field goal range, because he thought they needed to get to a certain yard line. The problem? They were already past that yard line, so they were, in fact, in field goal range, and Landry had no idea where the Cowboys were on the field. You can learn more about that by clicking the card in the upper right corner. When the coach has no idea where his team is on the field, that's a problem, and that's a sign that he should probably not be the coach of the organization anymore. So what if I said that there was a coach who did this that remained the coach of the team after the season was done? At least with the Cowboys, they parted ways with Tom Landry after the 1988 season ended. I cannot say the same about the San Diego Chargers when it came to this man right here. This man is Dan Henning, and it's kind of amazing how Henning even got a second opportunity to be a head coach in the NFL, because he was really bad during his first stint with the Atlanta Falcons. And unsurprisingly, he was even worse with the Chargers. During the 1990 season, he decided to motivate his players in the absolute dumbest way possible, deteriorating all trust between he and his players in the span of a couple of seconds. You can learn more about that by clicking the card in the upper right corner. In 1991, after just 1 game, he decided that it was the right time to fire his offensive coordinator, which set the tone for just how bad that 1991 season would be. You can learn more about that by clicking the card in the upper right corner. And in 1991, in one of the dumbest things any coach has ever done, he called a running play with 1 second left in the first half at his own 1-yard line, deciding to do that instead of just falling forward. Unsurprisingly, the play resulted in a safety, because of course it did. And you can learn more about that by clicking the card in the upper right corner. You get the idea. Dan Henning was a really bad head coach, and has a legitimate claim for being the worst coach in Chargers history. But of all the things he did, this one might be the stupidest, because in 1990, he pulled a Tom Landry, and not in a good way, but rather in that aforementioned 1988 way. Because during Week 5 of the 1990 NFL season, in a game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, Henning decided to do something with the idea being that his team wasn't at a certain yard line, when in actuality, they were already there. Because this is the story behind what might just be, considering the circumstances, one of the dumbest 4th downs in NFL history, and the man who might be the dumbest coach in the history of the Chargers franchise. Make sure you hit that like button down below, subscribe, hype up that video, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we post on the channel. Because we post every single down here about the weird and the wacky history of the NFL with stories like this one that you may not have heard of before. So if you like that sort of stuff, then this is definitely the place for you. Thanks in advance for liking and subscribing, and for hyping up the video, and for helping us grow this community. And with that in mind, let's talk about the time that the coach of the Bolts was being a real dolt. Before we break down the incident in question, we need some context to understand the importance of the game, as well as how the game was going. It's October 7th, 1990. It's Week 5 of the NFL season, and as we enter the second quarter of the year, we've got an AFC battle on our hands at Three Rivers Stadium between the San Diego Chargers and the Pittsburgh Steelers. I know it's hard to say that any game in Week 5 on the first Sunday of October is a must-win, but for both the Steelers and the Chargers, this game absolutely felt like a must-win. Both the Chargers and Steelers entered this game at 1-3, and every team in the AFC had at least one win by this point. So both teams needed to win this one to avoid being at the literal bottom of the barrel in the conference. Yes, the playoffs expanded in 1990 so that 6 teams could get in, so you had a bit more wiggle room to work with. But a 1-4 start is abysmal no matter how you want to slice it. And unfortunately for the Chargers, this game did not go according to plan. Not in the slightest bit. The Steelers haven't scored an offensive touchdown all season. They enter this game with just 32 points scored, which was the worst offense in football, averaging 8 points per game. And yet, in the first half, the Steelers dominated on that side of the ball, as they were finally able to show some signs of life on offense, taking a 24-7 lead midway through the third quarter. When all was said and done, Bubby Brister had one of his best games as a pro, going 11 for 14, completing 79% of his passes while throwing for 2 touchdowns and posting a passer rating of 145.5. The Steelers, who had gotten nothing going on the ground all season, had under 100 rushing yards in all of their games thus far, and had under 50 yards rushing in half of them, dominated in the trenches, running for 183 yards on well over 4 yards per carry. At least in the first half, on both sides of the ball, this game was complete and utter domination. Now, if you're the Chargers, after this offensive onslaught by the Steelers that seemingly came out of nowhere, you've got to cut into the deficit. You've got to find a way with little time left to claw your way back into this and turn a 3-score game into a 2-score game and keep going. This upcoming drive might be your biggest drive of the season. And while the drive starts off well for the Chargers, as they're able to get it to the 25-yard line of Pittsburgh after starting on their own 20 following a touchback, it quickly begins to stall. On first down, Billy Joe Tolliver gets sacked by Hardy Nickerson, losing 2 yards to push the Chargers back to the 27-yard line. On second down, Tolliver fires an incomplete pass, and then proceeds to do the same on third down. I should note that Tolliver really struggled this game, as he finished going 11 for 29, completing just 37% of his passes for 121 yards, including 96 net passing yards if we count sacks, 3 picks, a fumble, and a passer rating of 23, which is worse than if he did nothing but spike the ball into the ground on every single play. He threw an interception on the previous drive that gave the Steelers the 3-score lead. Now, it's fourth down. You can kick the field goal and make it a 2-score game. Kick the field goal on 4th and 12 from the 27, making it a 45-yard kick, and make it a 24-10 game. And while you'd rather walk away with 7 on the drive instead of 3, at the very least, you get something. At the very least, it's a 2-score game again, and you're right back in this thing. Instead, for some reason, Dan Henning decides to leave the offense on the field, thinking that they should go for it and try it on 4th and 12. Shocker, the pass falls incomplete and gets picked off by Carnell Lake, basically functioning as an arm punt. They could have gotten 3 on the drive. They could have kicked the field goal, which, by the way, I know it was a windy day, but the wind was in your favor on that side of the field, as Gary Anderson hit a 45-yard kick in the first quarter going down that side, and with plenty of room to spare, I might add. Instead, they try the long conversion and walk away empty-handed, eventually losing the game by a final score of 36-14 to drop to 1-4 and all but end their season. And after the game, a lot of the talk centered around this man right here, Chargers head coach Dan Henning, and his decision to go for it on 4th and 12 instead of taking what looked to be a pretty makeable field goal for John Carney. And if Henning said something like, "Carney told me what his target line was, and we were outside of that," then it's a non-story, since at that point, you're sort of in no man's land, and you're not punting the ball away. If Henning said something like, "The Steeler defense have been on the field for a long time, and I felt like we saw something over the previous 2 plays in terms of how they play their coverage that we could exploit," then this is a non-story, even if I might not agree with the logic. But do you want to know what Dan Henning said? Do you want to know why this man right here went for it on a 4th and 12 at the 27-yard line? In his words, The field goal was not exactly within our reach at that point. We were outside the 30-yard line. That's right. The reason that the Chargers decided not to kick a field goal on 4th and 12 to cut it to a 2-score game was because they thought it wasn't makeable because they were outside the 30-yard line. And you know what? That's a fair defense and explanation for why you don't kick it in that spot. Or at least it would be if they were, actually outside the 30-yard line. Because they were very much inside the 30-yard line. They were at the 27. And it's not like this was a ball spotting thing where Henning thought they were outside the 30, but then the refs moved it up half a yard and put it at the 29.5. They had been inside the 30 for quite some time now. They were inside the 30 on the 3rd down passing attempt. They were inside the 30 on the 2nd down passing attempt. They were inside the 30 on the 1st down passing attempt. They were inside the 30 on the 2nd down run that set up a new set of downs. For the last 4 plays, the Chargers were running their operation inside the Steelers' 30-yard line. That's at least 2 whole minutes of real time that the ball was past the 30. And yet, for some reason, Dan Henning, this moron right here, thought that they weren't inside the 30. He would have kicked the field goal if he knew where they actually were on the field. But because his eyes weren't working for some reason, he went for it in a 4th and almost impossible spot, which backfired to the shock of no one with a working brain cell. It's actually impressive how you have no idea where you are on the field for that long. Genuinely, it's impressive. Perhaps the primary responsibility of a head coach is to know what's going on and to be aware of your surroundings, because you can't make appropriate and accurate decisions without knowing what's going on. And the fact that Henning failed step 1 and was able to keep his job past the season, despite openly admitting to the world that he was completely incompetent at being a head coach? Baffling to me. Just baffling. And it's even more baffling when you realize that the 30-yard line goes across the entire field. There are certain hash marks where you might be guessing to some extent on where you are, but not intervals of 5, and especially not intervals of 10, where the yard lines are clearly marked and numbered. And if that wasn't enough, I'm also assuming that on the Three Rivers Stadium scoreboard, if you just looked up at that, they show you what yard line the team is at. I could be wrong on that front, but bottom line, you had options to know where you were located on the field. One of those options being your own eyesight. You had multiple resources available at your disposal. And the fact that you still got it wrong and made a decision that no one else would make in that spot is just insane to me. And it's no wonder why this man flamed out as the head coach of the Chargers, because he truly had no idea what he was doing. So what did we learn from all of this? If you don't know where you are located or positioned on the football field, then you should just look with your own eyes. And if you can't do that, either see an eye doctor or stop coaching a team, because you probably shouldn't be coaching one at that point. If I had a nickel for every time a coach did something like this in a game against the Pennsylvania team, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it's happened twice. Either way, it's 2 times too many. Because when all these elements are in play, you can't exactly be surprised when this play backfires. Talk about a dumb decision. Check out our live streaming schedule for the next few days. We're live every single day on this channel, whether we're covering a sporting event or playing GeoGuessr or just taking your requests. So make sure you like and subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single time that we go live and so that you can join this community. Also, thanks to all our members and our Patreon supporters who get exclusive perks like their name at the end of each video, members-only Q&A streams, and cool emojis to use on videos and during streams. See how you can join this community and become a member or a Patreon member by clicking the link in the description below.